Where are we? We are here. So, in terms of my part of the session, I'm going to go first. I'm going to talk about survey results, the awards, our complaints process, and our constitution. If you read my last newsletter, you've got access to the full survey results. So we went out, as you know, a couple of months ago to all members and said, we're looking for some feedback. We got a lot of feedback. So 2017, which was when we started talking about bringing together the Window Association and the Glass Association, that survey got 179 responses. We had 97 in 2019, really low response in 2021, and this year 121 responses. I'm just going to go through a couple of the things that were highlights to me. So firstly and importantly, the purpose of the association exists to create a better and healthier built environment for New Zealanders. We are the voice of the industry, supporting and educating our membership community. Do you agree in that purpose? So it was reassuring that we got 87% of respondents agreed with that. It's kind of important to know that we're heading in the right path in terms of what we should be focused on and what we're doing. So from my perspective, that was a good endorsement of the association purpose. Not as good a result, but still improving over time. Do you agree that we're living up to that? Are we actually achieving that? So 62% in 2019, 72% in 2021, and 79% this year. That's still a pretty healthy result, I think, from my perspective. Would you recommend joining our association to others? So this is always a good question to go, do you see value yourself and therefore you'd recommend someone else because you think they're going to get value? So 71% in 2019, 80% in 2021, and only 76% this year. So we've gone backwards a bit. So there's still more work we need to do there to deliver better value for you. That's certainly something the board are focused on. Right, the next two slides are interesting, well, from my perspective, are interesting. Do you believe the association's working on behalf of the industry? 80% said yes. Then the next question is, do you believe we're working on behalf of your business? We only get 67% of people agree with that. So people understand what we're doing, but they're not seeing it actually coming back into the day-to-day running of their own business. And so this, again, is another area of focus that the board have as we look at what we need to do and what we need to do more of or less of as we go into 2024 to change that result. I'm not expecting you to read the next couple of pages. As I said, all of the content, you can click on the link and go and read all 51 pages yourself. These are the 2 pages where people answered the question, what's the area of weakest performance for the association? If I was to summarize what that says, basically, it's about increase your profile and your ability to influence MB and government. We want more of that, please. These 3 pages are what is the association doing really well. And the theme in this one actually is most people believe that we're doing well at communicating. And by that I mean communicating with members. Now, it's a survey, so like with all of these results, we've got contradictory results. We've got people that go, we're hopeless at this. But in this particular instance, the majority of people think we're doing okay. That's all I was going to cover in terms of the survey. What I want to talk about now are the 2024 awards. And I thought I'd start actually by showing the winner for 2023, which is white aluminium for Stuart Dawson Corner in Wellington. The reason why I want to talk about 2024 awards is because basically we've almost thrown out the old ones and completely rewritten them for next year. And the reason for that, quite simply, is we're looking for greater participation. And we think the changes we've made will encourage that. So what's being done in 2024? The categories are no longer based on price of the job. They're based on regions. And the region being the region the project is actually delivered in. We've revised the judging criteria, so it's got a much stronger technical focus and focuses on the work you do rather than how pretty the building looks. We've revised the judging criteria for the Designing with Glass categories. We've revised the judging criteria for the Innovation Award and for the Sustainability Awards. We've added 2 new awards, being the Achievement and Chairperson Awards, removed the Showroom Award, and extended the entry period to 3 months. You've got longer to get your entry in. So effectively from about February next year, you'll get the opportunity to start entering your awards. Then the winners will be announced in Christchurch on the 21st of June. We'll be at the Christchurch Art Gallery. A little note at the bottom here about 2025, because as we went out, as the working group went out, as we got feedback from members about what we were doing, started to have a conversation about 2025. If we were in Christchurch for 2024, then in 2025, we're probably going to be in Auckland. If we're going to be in Auckland, do we want to do something more than just have an awards dinner? Do we want to have some workshops or a conference? And there was a desire that if we did, that would probably have a glass and glazing theme. And the reason why I'm raising it now is because if you are aware of any great speakers or any particular topics you want us to cover, let us know about that now. This is the kind of thing that you have to start planning well in advance. And we're going to start working on that soon. Next topic for me is our website. So we get about 5,000 visitors to our website every month. In the past couple of weeks, we've made some changes. The main changes we've made are we've refreshed the homepage. We've refreshed the consumer guides page. We've refreshed all of the consumer guides. We've rewritten the member search function. And what I mean by that is that, I don't know if you've used that, but it was quite slow to bring up the results. And so we got our web developers to rewrite that so you get the results faster. And the other thing we did is on a number of our pages, we've got our member logos scrolling through. Excuse me. We've more than doubled the size of those, so they stand out really well now. If your logo's not showing up in that scrolling loop, it'll be because you haven't sent it to me. So I've requested these a few times. If you want your logo to show up, please just send it to me and I will add it. Completely different topic. This slide's just to remind me to talk about our new complaints policy and process, which was approved at our last board meeting. So the policy, the compliments, suggestions, and complaints policy, which that's what will go up on our website. And then the process sits behind that, and that's about how we interact with yourselves. And I know we don't get a lot of complaints, I have to say, but when we do, often our members are surprised to be hearing from us, and are usually a little bit affronted that one of their customers has decided that they've had enough and they want to involve us as well. In terms of our involvement, it's quite simple. It's light touch. We are looking for resolution. We are on your side. We will contact, if we get a complaint, first thing we do is contact you and go, we've got this. What's your response? How can we help? So I just want to clarify what that approach looks like in case you're ever in the unfortunate situation where you end up talking with us about a complaint. Finally, for me, what you're seeing on your screen is the board's 2024 calendar. So we have a calendar for our board meetings to make sure that across the 4 meetings they have in February, April, July, and October, we're reviewing all of our policies, and we've got our standard agenda items in terms of looking at our financials and those sorts of things. A couple of things are different about next year. One is that the AGM will be in May instead of June, and it'll be a big AGM. And why I'm saying it'll be big is because the Incorporated Societies Act has been rewritten, and as a result of that, every incorporated society in New Zealand, I believe there's over 200,000 of them, has to re-register, and they have to have a constitution that's compliant with the new law. That effectively means we're going to be throwing out our constitution because it's at the point where you can't rewrite it. You might as well just start with a new one. And we'll be looking for members at that AGM to confirm our new constitution. Not very exciting, but important for us in terms of how we operate. Now, we will make sure that gets distributed before the meeting, and everyone's got the chance to provide any feedback, but that's a significant event for us into next year. Which brings me to this slide. Any questions of me? Okay, Rob, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and put myself on mute, and you should be good to go. Yeah, looking good, just so you know.
All right, kia ora everyone. Just thought I'd cover off some of the things that have been keeping us busy for the during the year. This is a snapshot from my last board report. In case you weren't aware, we do log most of the queries that come in through the through our email system or contact us from the website. And this quarter, or the last quarter, is pretty typical. So basically, one query a day, a little bit more. The split is also pretty typical, to be fair. More window queries than glass queries. This number here, non-member queries, was there was comment at the board about what were the non-member queries. These are not non-member companies. They are builders, homeowners, councils, people outside the association that have called in or messaged in with a query about windows or glass. Or it might be non-members, non-member companies that are inquiring about membership with the organisation. And as Brett says, we don't get a huge number of complaints, just one in the last quarter, which was resolved. So it was obviously a pretty easy one. Earlier in the year, we were invited to attend the OSFINX 23 conference. So OSFINX is the Australian Glass and Window Association conference. And they want, because they're about to launch into a thermal performance program similar to what we've been through, we were invited to tell our story and go through the processes that we went through, and basically tell our H1 story. It was pretty interesting, sort of 500 people in the room. It was great to get in front of them and have a good chat. I do think the Australians have got a more complex path moving forward than we do. When we first introduced this to you guys, to the members, uptake was pretty high. Everyone was pretty keen to get on with it and do something, recognizing that the world was going to change. Our cousins across the ditch are not quite so confident that they want to change. So it was kind of interesting. I was a judge for the AGWA Design Awards this year, and lots and lots of the projects used high performance glazing, but not that many used thermally broken frames. They were still installing high performance glass into cold aluminium frames. So kind of an indication of, I think, where their heads are at. One of the big projects for the year, and actually for just about all of my time with the association, has been window installation. So as you'll all be aware, back in 1819, we recognised that recessed window details were becoming more and more popular, and we developed up Project Tim, only to have it ultimately squashed by MB, saying that there wasn't an applicable test method for testing recessed window details, and basically they withdrew their support from the program. After the pulling of Project Tim, Brett and I met with MB senior management and sort of said that we still need to do something. They agreed that they wanted to do something, and MB set up a large working group to have a look at recessed window details. Now, the group is about 20 odd people. And to be fair, a lot of them are sort of architects and or designers. And most of them actually felt we were there to redesign window systems, not necessarily installation details. And for the first year or so of that group, not a lot happened, to be fair. So we proposed that we pull out a small working group to just focus on the details and trying to get something prepared, and they agreed to that. So the smaller working group is just 2 or 3 members from MB, myself, another member from the association, and brands. And so we started looking at recessed window details, and initially we broke them into 4 groups: facing frames and non-facing frames, so traditional aluminium or thermally broken New Zealand windows, and then traditional UPVC windows without a facing on them. And then we also looked at recessed, where the window is brought back to the framing line, and rebaited, where the window is brought within the framing line. And we assessed each of those 4 situations and ultimately decided that in terms of E2AS1 or an acceptable solution under E2, the rebaited details were too complex. It was agreed that rebated window details are very, very bespoke, depending on framing depth, window position, cladding types. There was just way too much involved to develop an acceptable solution. So we trimmed the project back to just look at recessed windows. So as I say, recessed windows are those that are just brought back to the framing line. So typically within the cavity. And we looked at it that way. We maintained that, we accept that there are two different window types in New Zealand these days. And so we maintain that facing and non-facing categories. So we've worked through with MB. Their initial desire was to simply wrap the window in flashings. And there's a number of systems out there that do that at the moment. The issue is that if you're creating an acceptable solution, you cannot use a proprietary product. So like I said, there are a number of flashing systems out there, but they're all typically extruded flashings with injection molded corner blocks and those kind of things to make sure that all the junctions between head and jambs and sill work as they should. Like I say, you can't use a proprietary system in an acceptable solution. So all of those flashings had to be replaced with folded items. And when you do it with folded items, a number of weaknesses start to pop through. So I actually spent a bit of time doing some drawings, showing the weaknesses and the overlaps between, like I say, head and jamb and sill. And I think after a bit of discussion, MB finally got their heads around it and have kind of acknowledged that we need a detail that is not dissimilar to where we're at with Project Tim. So we've developed up the detail for facing frames and also for non-facing frames. MB are away at the moment redrawing all of these and just picking up all the nuances that we've discussed. And what we will do now, the small group will take our details back to the large group. And once the large group signs off on them, then we will move forward to the next step. Now, unfortunately, the next step is not publication. The issue that MB had with Project Tim was around the testing of the window. So E2VM1 is the test method. So you go through and you test the window and its connection to the building. And then you go through what's called a water management test, where you introduce failure around the window and you retest it and you understand how the details manage those failures. Now that water management test is very, very prescriptive, which I've put in front of you now. So you're drilling 6mm diameter holes above the head flashing, at the jambs, through the sill. What we found is that when you try to drill those holes with recessed window details, that you're not necessarily introducing a failure to the window installation details. So the next phase of the project will be to revisit the water management testing and develop an addendum to E2VM1 that ensures that you are actually introducing failure when you do the water management testing. So that is the next step. So first of all, we'll sign off on the details. We'll redevelop the test method. MB also want to do some hygroscopic modeling. They want to check that what happens with these details in terms of vapor transfer across the wall. Kind of a new step for them and will be kind of interesting. So what we're saying is that if we introduce failure and we've got water running down the wall below the window, whether it's on the back of it's supposed to be on the back of the cladding, what happens to that water vapor? Does it all run away under evaporation? Does it actually start migrating back through the building wrap? So a bunch of things to understand there, or that MB want to understand there. So they want to go through that. And then we will go through some physical testing of the details. MB have budgeted to do the testing, which is fantastic. But one of the things that's been discussed, I'm not sure it's been completely agreed, but one of the things we've discussed is currently E2AS1 has window details across the 9 standard claddings. What we are thinking we will do with the recess details is that we will draw the details with maybe a couple of popular claddings and then basically push cladding manufacturers to run through the E2VM1 test to ensure that their claddings work with these recessed window details. So rather than actually being really prescriptive about how you go about installing a window into, say, ply cladding, someone will have to go through at some point and do the testing to demonstrate that that is appropriate. So that's the program. Unfortunately, none of this is going to happen super quickly. With MBIE's document release program, what they do is they develop up a document. It goes out for consultation in April, which typically closes around June. Then the comments that are received in that period are worked through, and the document is released in November. So there is no way we are going to get through the work that's required before April 24. So therefore, we're into April 25, looking for a release on this potentially around the end of 2025. So as much as we would like to have some details available more quickly, at the moment we're consenting something like 10,000 homes a year with recessed window details, currently based on alternative solutions with no real, testing support behind those. Brett, from time to time finds himself in Wellington, trying to give MB a bit of a wind up to try and move more quickly through this program. But the reality is anything done by committee is slow. Anything done with MB is slow. Anything done with an MB committee is just slow. So that's probably one of the biggest projects we've got on at the moment. Another thing that we set ourselves for the year was to develop a guide or an industry best practice guide around replacement glaze or replacement windows. To be fair, whilst we get only a small number of complaints, a large number of those complaints is actually around either retrofitted glazing or replacement windows. So that was the driver behind developing up a best practice guide. When we got into it, we recognized that replacement windows and retro glazing are two very different subjects. So we split the project and we started with retrofitted glazing because, to be fair, it's slightly easier. So we've developed up a retrofitted double glazing guide, which is almost due for publication. I just did receive a couple more comments from the working group day before yesterday. So I'm just going to work through those and we'll get this up online very, very quickly. One of the things that we've done is when you look at the complaints that we get, it seems a lot of them actually come down to communication. Did the homeowner understand what the salesman was saying? Did the salesman understand what the homeowner was looking for? So we've created a series of checklists to actually go through, and as a reminder to primarily the salesperson, to just make sure that they've discussed all the things that they need to discuss with the homeowner, and that the homeowner doesn't actually understand these things. One of the first things is, when you're rocking up to retrofit a series of windows, are the windows actually suitable to be retrofitted? Should they actually just be replaced because their condition is poor, or the frame is not suitable for double glazing for whatever reason? So that's one of the primary things. The other thing to understand from the homeowner is actually why they are wanting to retro double glaze. Are they imagining that by retro double glazing they're going to get rid of all their condensation issues? Do they believe that all of a sudden their house is going to be so many degrees warmer and they're not going to require heating anymore? Or are they looking for acoustic benefits? So unless you understand all of those elements, it's very, very difficult to deliver a product that the homeowner is satisfied with. So just a series of checklists, just as reminders, let's go through all of these things, and hopefully both parties have a better understanding of what the project is about. So like I say, the release of that is imminent. Then we went into the replacement windows portion of the project and realized again that has two parts, because insert windows and full replacements, again, very, very different things. So we're working on the insert windows project at the moment. The committee have met and we've got a draft. I'm just formulating up that draft at the moment, and we will meet again, I think, next week to discuss that draft and see whether what we need to do to move forward. To be fair, again, I've said that a lot. To be fair. Insert windows is not wholly different to retro double glazing. You're really just wrapping an aluminium frame or a PVC frame around the double glazing unit and inserting it into the existing window. So that one was a pretty easy one. The replacement windows will be a chunkier document because at this point we start introducing external moisture concerns or E2 concerns. Again, one of the comments that we get back from homeowners who have had this work done is that, oh, my details, the windows weren't installed per E2. Now, when they say that, they usually mean E2AS1 because they confuse the two slightly. And that's a reality. You know, E2AS1, the details within that are designed around a construction sequence, which is gone when you're talking about full replacement because cladding is already on, and Mr. and Mrs. Smith don't really want to pay to remove their cladding to install their windows to make sure that everything is in accordance with E2AS1. So that is going to be one of the challenges of that document. How do we deal with all the different situations? You know, full replacement windows into brick veneer is quite different to bevelback weatherboard. So we will work through that. Interesting, I had a conversation with Clinton from Agua earlier this week, and they are in a similar position. So the Australian government has just thrown a whole bunch of cash at the replacement window market. And so they're looking to develop a guide for replacement windows as well. So we've been talking a bit about that, and you know, hopefully between us, we'll come up with something that is valuable. So working through that at the moment. One of the other mini guides that we are creating at the moment, and this guide has actually changed to being an industry standard. We spent a bit of time updating our existing guide to glazing blocks. Like I say, this is going to become an industry standard. And it was really around the durability of IGUs. So when you are using glazing blocks and when you're using them correctly, we'll ignore that part for now, but some materials are not compatible with the secondary seal around the edge of the IGU. So we've been through and created a table of block materials and when they're suitable and when they're not, to ensure that, you know, when you're putting blocks in your windows, that you're not potentially degrading the secondary seal and causing premature failure of the IGU. That's mostly what this document is about. The block suppliers are all working through their systems and are removing, you know, the non-compatible materials from their product lists. So this document is all but complete. We met about it earlier this week as well. A couple of minor changes, and that it's actually already been published on the site. We've got a couple of minor updates to go with it. As newer technologies have come along, things that we didn't consider when we started this document have come into the market, and so we just need to make some updates around that. Glazing blocks led into glazing seals. The driver behind looking at glazing seals, which again will be an industry standard, is that there's a desire to start removing, I think, PVC seals from the market. We've used them forever, but we all know that they shrink back at the corners, and PVC is not an ideal wedge material, to be fair. So I said it again. So we've looked at that. There's also a complication in that PVC seals have never been allowed to be used above 3 stories high. Yet, you know, on-site glaziers will grab whatever wedge is in the van and reglaze that window that's 8 stories up. We wanted to try and make sure that that situation didn't occur. So again, we're working with the glazing seal manufacturers to ensure that, you know, the durability of our product moving forward. So again, working through that as we speak. Solar heat gain. So the current edition of H1, the 5th edition of H1, we always knew was an interim step toward what MB were ultimately looking to achieve. And as a reminder, clause H1 of the building code is the energy efficiency clause of the building code. It's not the thermal performance code. The 5th edition of H1 did look almost entirely at thermal performance. And I think the belief there was that with increased thermal performance, increased energy efficiency is a byproduct of that, but not necessarily focusing on energy efficiency. What we know, or what we think we know, is that moving forward, MB will have a focus on energy efficiency, and that designers will be choosing products to ensure a limited amount of energy is required to heat and cool a home. And one of the impacts is solar heat gain through glazing. We have long thought that the current approach to H1 was potentially going to build houses that were that had the potential for overheating. So we decided we wanted to have a look at solar heat gain. We know that MB were looking at it, but we wanted to make sure that we could provide them some solid guidance on the selection of G values and glass to meet their requirements. One of the things that we were really nervous about was that if you look at H1 at the moment, table E111, which we've talked about lots and lots and lots, has a series of U values written into it. Okay, the last thing we wanted to happen was for a designer to consult with H1, look at this table, select a U value of whatever, go to another table, select a G value, and then go to clause G7 of the code and select a VLT, specify all three of those values and have them not be available in a single piece of glass. So we wanted to make sure that the guidance we provided to MB and to designers meant that they could actually buy glass that achieved all of the things that they wanted to achieve. So we set about doing a series of modeling. We employed Jason Quinn from Sustainable Engineering to run a series of models for us. Now, they were based on similar house lots to E111. Across all the different climate zones, we included 2 cities per climate zone. The 2 houses that we used for the modeling, one was a standalone house that was actually formed part of E111, and then we looked at a townhouse, which is very, very different in its glazed aspect. And the townhouse that we used was actually used as a check for E111, but not actually used as part of it. So we took these 2 buildings, like I say, all across the climate zones, 2 cities in each climate zone, 4 orientations, 4 G values, a total of something like 384 separate models were run to understand the impact of G value on the energy demand of the building. Like I said, we wanted to create a table that showed, well, potentially create a table that showed if you had a glass type, you understood what its U value was, what its solar value was, or its G value was, and what its VLT might be. This is a very old table and needs a, well, it's actually not a very old table. It's one that was created by Brands, but it's not quite what we were looking to achieve. We looked at a table from the States, which was much, much simpler to read and might be what we're looking to do. We're still trying to decide what that table looks like, but we've received our raw data, and for the last month, off and on, we've been, the working group looking at solar heat gain has been analysing all of this data. You know, the solar factors or G values that we've been looking at, heating demand, cooling demand, hours of overheating. We've been working through and tabulating all of that, trying to see what a table might look like. Now, the reason I've stuck this in here is that MB have actually come out and said that, like I say, they wanted to focus on energy efficiency for buildings moving forward. And their initial thoughts were that they would cap energy demand for heating and cooling only at 60 kilowatts per meter squared per annum. And you'll see that here, so this is a house in Auckland. Currently, those 2 houses that we looked at, currently the energy demand for those is actually sitting really close to that 60 kilowatt cap. They're talking about for 2027, reducing that to 30, and then finally in 2030, reducing it way down to 15. Now, if they do that, now I haven't actually seen this information come out for consultation, but I have seen that MB have used it a couple of times. So we're basing our work on this. But 15 kilowatts per hour per meter squared per annum is going to be really, really difficult to achieve. And we'll probably look at mean a redesign or the reformatting of the way we design houses. But anyway, so we've been processing that data, looking at tables that I think will come up something like this. We have a meeting tomorrow to talk about actually what these tables are going to look like. We're talking about offering up ranges of G values instead of just having a strict value per site. Don't take too much notice of these. This is just an initial draft. We've still got to establish exactly how those figures are arrived at, but we're working through that process. Like I say, in the hope that we can inform MB on the document moving forward and provide something valuable for designers. Now, when I set about putting this presentation together, I decided I didn't want to talk about H1, but throughout the week, I've taken a couple of calls regarding the statement of thermal performance. Now, we've been working on this for a couple of years. I've spoken about it at a couple of different BOINS conferences, spoken to lots of councils. You know, the current iteration of this document reflects, you know, council input and supplier input, etc., etc. And it seems that councils are starting to take on this document. I spoke with a council the other day who were going to incorporate it into their consent requirement documentation. So that they saw value in this. So for those of you who haven't seen it, this is a method of showing that the house slot that you've just delivered meets a construction R value that complies with the consented specification. The reason I bring it up is that the theory behind its development was that this was a document that was delivered once the house lot of windows had been made. But some councils are starting to ask for it up front at time of consent, which is okay, accepting that, as we all know, what is consented may not actually match what is finally delivered, whether that's through changes to the building, changes to the consent, whatever it might be. So the comment to date has been that, yes, I think it's fine to deliver this document up front. You just need to be sure it's identified as being preliminary and based on quotations, say, instead of the windows that are being finally reduced, because you don't know that Mr. and Mrs. Smith aren't going to change out that 600 by 600 window for a 4 meter wide sliding door, which obviously have a huge impact on that construction R value. We've had a couple of queries about it. A set of plans has come in and the architect or designer has very clearly used a calculation method to come up with their construction R value for the windows. And the question comes through to us, does that mean that we have to use the construction, the calculation method to come up with that value? The answer to that is no. As a window supplier, your responsibility is to deliver a set of windows that comply with the consented specification. So whether the construction R value is on the drawings or buried inside the specification, you have to understand what that is and deliver a series of windows that meet that construction R value. So it doesn't matter what work the designer has done, they will come up with a number that says 0.46 or 0.5 or 0.7 or 0.2, whatever the number is. You just have to deliver a set of windows that complies with that. And whether you're using table E111 to do that, or a WERS calculator off the back of your costing software, or calculated straight from H1, that's up to you, but just deliver what's been asked. And that is it from me. I see nothing in the chat. Has anyone got any questions? And again, you people are so easy. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we will also take questions afterwards. We'll also take feedback around whether this format works for you in terms of the timing or the process. Let us know what you think about that and whether or not you're getting value out of these updates. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day. That's it from us. Have a great day.